So the earth is creative. So throughout this video, we're going to go over how creativity functions and materializes. And it's really important to keep in mind how important expertise and abstract ideas are throughout this entire video. And by the end of the video, it should be clear why those are important to the creative process. Now, before going over the creative process, it's good to touch up on some of the stigmas that we have about creativity. And the most important one that I think needs to be addressed is the sudden appearance of creative ideas. And what I mean by this is we constantly hear about how creative ideas come out of nowhere. Again, talking about Syracuse, how he jumped up out of the bathhouse yelling, "Eureka, Eureka, Eureka," after he found out how to measure the volume of an object. And while there is a part of the creative process that does really kind of have a eureka moment, by just concentrating on those moments, you're really missing the entire point. And these moments get a lot of attention because they're great for stories. However, it usually skims over the point that there's a lot of work that precedes those moments. For this video, we're mostly going to be touching up on Poincaré's creative process. This is a 4-phase process that goes over how creativity generally functions. Again, this is just a general concept. It's not specific to one person. And in fact, the creative process can look drastically different between two people. But you'll most likely find, or while those two processes might look drastically different, there's most likely 4 general phases. Those phases are called preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. And it's really important to note that these phases kind of happen at the same time, sorta. It's a little messy. Okay, so the very first phase is preparation. This usually involves solving some sort of problem. That could be creating an interesting melody. That could also be creating a more aerodynamic car. However, in this part of the phase, there's often in the preparation phase, the preparation phase is really all about exploring ideas. You probably know this part of the process as brainstorming, just throwing ideas at the wall. And often in this part of the creative process, there's not a lot of successes. It often seems unproductive, and it's usually frustrating for a lot of people. The second phase, again, is incubation. And before going farther with incubation, it's really important to note that this part of the process can take no time at all, just a few minutes, or it can take months, maybe even years. This can be playing around with ideas and testing it in different ways. Maybe if you're a composer, you have the melody written out, but you change a note here or there, or you change a rhythm. A mathematician might look at a formula in a new way. This part of the process is really just playing with the ideas that you have already come up with. And during this process, your ideas start to bear more fruit. However, one of the more important parts of the incubation phase is the fact that this also functions on a subconscious level. After you go through the preparation phase, you have all of these ideas in your mind and you're trying to solve a problem. And if you ever walk away from that problem, your subconscious will still be working on those ideas. And there's a freedom to this part of the process. Your subconsciousness is not tied down to your rational conscious thought. And this is where abstract ideas are important. One of the things that humans really excel at is pattern recognition. And our world has many interweaving patterns that are ripe to be found. And while humans really excel at pattern recognition, for some reason, our subconscious does a lot of the heavy work here. It's usually the one that finds a connection between two seemingly unrelated ideas, aka an abstract connection. And this is also why everyone has their own creative voice. You are the only person that has had your specific life experiences. And because of this, it is impossible for anyone else to make the same abstract connections as you. No one will be able to have the same eureka moment as you do. And that brings us to the third phase, illumination. As I said earlier, this is the phase that gets the most attention. It's when that golden idea finally comes to your mind. Now, this illumination moment doesn't always happen at the subconscious level. Sometimes it does happen while you're actively working. We just mostly hear about that eureka moment that seemingly came out of nowhere. And we hear about these moments a lot because usually they're more flashy, and usually they create the best story, so it's not surprising that we hear them more often. For instance, there's a 20th century composer named Vincent Persichetti. He was famous for having blank staff paper on the steering wheel of his car so that he could compose at a moment's notice. And specifically, he would mostly compose while he was in the car. However, please don't do this. He did get in an accident. During his honeymoon, nonetheless. His wife was injured in the crash. She surprisingly didn't divorce him. But the fact that I'm telling you about that story and not the countless hours that he spent at his desk writing music really drives home the point that this aspect of creativity is just shared more often than the other aspects of creativity. Again, it's a better story. However, what's usually missing in these stories is that to have these points of illumination, you have to spend a lot of time in the preparation phase. You have to spend a lot of time in the incubation phase. In other words, you have to put in the time sitting at a desk before you have moments of illumination in your car like Vincent Persichetti did. However, I want to state again, do not compose while driving. That is bad. Okay, now the last stage is the verification stage. This stage looks a lot like preparation. You go back to problem solving. Some may also call this the evaluation stage, especially in the arts. This phase of the creative process is really all about deciding whether an idea has merit, whether an idea has value. And this is when expertise is very helpful. If you are more of an expert in your field, you will be more likely to notice if an idea bears fruit. Now, it's also important to go over again that all of these phases really happen simultaneously. And the mathematician Poincaré brings up the fact that preparatory thinking activates relevant ideas into the subconscious and helps the incubation stage. And it's also important to point out that after you have the illumination phase, you might find that during the verification phase that you have new problems, so you have to go back to the preparatory stage. These really happen all at the same time, and it's a really messy process.